have been watching This Is Us, a multi-generational family drama created across timelines and seemingly centered around a single tragedy. I have what is probably a weird proclivity in consuming stories, one that entails identifying with a single interpersonal relationship and prioritizing an awareness of its development or deterioration over experiencing the actual storyline. And true to that, I haven't actually been watching This Is Us as much as I have explored thoroughly Jack and Rebecca's marriage, an intensely cherished, multi-decade affair that went up in flames, literally. Without going into any spoilery details, let's just say this profoundly sad poem about a grieving widow could not have crossed my radar at a better or worse time. Of all the emotions that a person can experience, grief is probably the hardest for literature to do justice to. Most times, in what is perhaps an attempt to be truthful to the vastness of grief, stories and poems fall short of being intimate with the machinations of a punctured heart. I found My Heart and I to be an exception in that regard. Now, this poem doesn't figure as prominently in public discourse about Elizabeth Barret drowning as her love sonnets, but, well, this is for Rebecca Pearson, and I think that's reason enough for this video. The poem is written in 7 stanzas of 7 lines each with a rhyme scheme of A, B, B, A, C, C, A, and it adopts a conversational enough tone to render the freedom to enjam as needed. The very first word of the poem, enough, and its typography provide an early insight into the fatiguing grief the poem sets out to articulate. As they sit by the lover's headstone, the woman and her heart are so tired they wish it was their name on the headstone. With time and the growth of moss, the engraving of the name has softened, much like how heaven renews life on earth, but the lady is exhausted. She trusted her lover with the story of her life, writing it with her own blood, as if that would keep it from obscurity, and yet it was a love that could not keep its subject alive. There isn't enough glitter left in her for another man to look at her with anything but indifference etched on his face, and the melodic voice that thrilled her lover must now remain quiet enough to let him sleep may never be heard again. The 4th stanza is a recollection of another time, when the lady and her lover, who now has a name Ralph, sat beneath the lime tree to watch the sun slip into the bushes. Ralph turned round to say she looked tired, but she shook her head to say otherwise. It's now that she's really tired. There's no one that will take her on his arm or kiss her between warm and rushed breaths. Her and her heart are forever destitute, and even if the world came calling with the prettiest pleasures, when she can barely spare a glance for a baby or the blue sky, she would remain unruffled. And yet there is little room in the world to accommodate the fatigue of a heart, especially when that is the inevitable consequence of loving. She takes solace in knowing that she had a love story, notwithstanding the fact that it ended. There are these poems that are so quick to make you feel like your throat is closing in that you don't realize it's even happening. While I do believe that the reader's own lived experiences have as much to do with that magic as a poet's way with the words, this was a poem that made me want to look away from that conviction. It is tiresome to love and lose. I earnestly hold that grief comes in so many shapes and sizes. A past version of oneself, or a fantasy that was destroyed by reality, a companion walking away and never realizing you still had eyes for them, and above all, a loved one's last breath. And this poem forces one to come in touch with that horrid feeling once again. The images that this poem evokes are stunning. Very quickly you progress from a woman grieving by the grave to a kiss at twilight, to the world's riches at one's feet, to a scabrous and worn-out heart. And maybe that is what it means to mourn, to weep, to remember, to try again, and to fail. I'm a particular fan of the way the opening word is used, as if to suggest that the narrator is the very end of the rope and has little room to feel. The poet also employs enjambment to good measure, with one line fading into another like one thought dissolving into another. Another line that particularly stood out is the description of the moss growing over the engraving and how it made the knife that etched that name less sharp. To me, that's an allusion to the cycle of pain. From a fresh sting to a dull memory buried under new mornings, new stories, and, well, make you well.